You guys have gone about this offseason, spring and summer, or some guys that you're having to replace at really key positions, kind of where you guys stand with that?
I think you evaluate every team, as you come into it. So we understand where our strengths are. We understand the talent that was lost in the skill players from a year ago, and we understand right now our strength, their identity is 4 returning offensive linemen and a very talented running back. And so on the defensive side, it's not a lot different. Our front 4 should be extremely good. We've got 2 really experienced linebackers and 1 guy in the secondary that has experience. So, we understand the skill positions on both sides. They've got to come a long way. And, this offseason's been great for that. I think some of those guys, Dylan Stooksbury and Weaver, and some of those, Fabi Niwa. And then on the other side, in the defensive secondary, there's a couple of freshmen, a couple of sophomores that are really getting better very quickly, and those guys are going to have to grow up fast.
With Jordan back there at quarterback through the years, you could probably put so much on him, and his IQ was such a luxury to have. And as a high school coach, you always have to start over again eventually. And how's that process going? You have a couple guys you're working with?
I'm getting a lot of gray hairs very quickly. We have been so blessed. Since I've come back to Powell, we had Walker Trustley, who was a 4-year starter that I got to coach his last 2 years. Then we've had Potts, who's now been a 3-year starter. So, I've only coached, out on the field on a Friday, 2 quarterbacks in the last 5-6 years. And so, now I've got a sophomore and a freshman that I'm trying to groom. And these kids are very talented. I don't want to take anything away from them. Deuce Rogers, a big kid, very talented kid. Really wants to be a good quarterback, is learning the position on a day-by-day. And Jalen Benjamin, a freshman who's coming in and trying to push him. He's trying to steal as many reps as he can. He's a guy who wants to be a good quarterback, has done a lot of camps this summer to try and develop his skills. So those 2 guys are taking all the steps necessary to be good high school quarterbacks. I try to remind my other coaches, I try to remind myself that I can't evaluate them based on senior Jordan Potts. I have to evaluate them based on sophomore Jordan Potts, because these are young guys. These are 15, 16-year-olds that are taking that spot. They've got talent. I think 2 or 3 years from now, we might be talking about either one of these guys in the same type breath. We've talked about Trustley and Potts, but right now they've got to realize who we are offensively, and we're a team with a really talented running back and 4 returning starters on the offensive line. We're going to run the football. We're going to develop a pass game as we go through the season.
How did you learn to toe the line as a coach of bringing your guy along, quarterback along, without overloading him?
Right. It's tough. You give him things, you figure out what he naturally is comfortable with. And those are the things that you're going to build everything off of. And so, whatever that is, whether that's quick game, whether that's simple reads, whether that's high-low options, whether it's getting him out of the pocket, whether it's putting him in RPO situations, you figure out what he naturally can do well, and then you build everything else around that. You start to try and develop downfield progressions. You start to try and develop, over-type shots and things of that nature. You're trying to figure out the next step for him, on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis. But you better identify what he can naturally do already and let him go do that. Let him have some success, whether it's early in a 7-on-7, early in a season, or maybe just early in a game. Let him get his feet wet a little bit. Let him feel good about it. And now you can start to broaden out a little bit.
With your run game with Wheeler, last year was so productive, and he was kind of a breakthrough player. Yeah. What's different? What's he enhanced this year?
We're putting a lot more on him. He's another guy that we'll try and get involved in the pass game as much as we can. He's tough to guard. He's tough for guys to play one-on-one with. He's so quick, but who he is and who he naturally is an inside zone type kid. His one-step burst, his ability to see things and make a guy miss and then get vertical, there just aren't many like that. I've had a lot of people try to compare him to Mobley from 10 years ago, and really as a sophomore, that's about as close as you can get. His sophomore totals, his production for us, and not only, offensively, but he played every snap of defense as well. And he's a guy that we're going to try and take some of that off of him here early on so that we can make sure he's healthy and fresh come to the second half of the season.
With Steven last year, I didn't know what his productivity levels would look like. After you lose Walter Nolan, you think, well, Walter freed up stuff for Steven. What would his stats look like as a junior? And he still produced. And just how much does that speak to him as a player, and what have you seen out of him growth-wise and learning the game and growing physically?
Yeah, Steven had a step backwards. As a sophomore, he had 17 sacks. Well, last year he only had 16.
Okay.
And so, he had a big step. Yeah. But, I've never seen a defensive lineman that put up the stat line that Steven Souls did last year. 135 tackles as a defensive lineman, whatever it was, 40-something hurries, 20-something behind-the-line hits. 16 sacks. What he was able to accomplish last year was extremely impressive. And so much of that is about his energy on a Friday night. I've told multiple people here today, I don't know that there's a kid in this area that has more fun on a Friday night than Steven Schultz. He's wide open. Now, he's miserable during the day to corral on a Friday, but when you turn him loose at 7 o'clock, he might have as much fun playing football as anybody I've been around. And so he's wide open the entire time. He's going to chase guys from sideline to sideline, and if he gets his hands on you, he's probably going to celebrate a little bit after it's over. And so he's a fun kid to be around. He's a kid I'm glad's on our roster, and he's a kid pushes the rest of our guys to match his energy.